Hey friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to the channel. It's time again for Ask WrestleJuice. Y'all left a ton of great questions over on the community thread. So once again, I'm going to record this week's and next week's all in this one sitting. And then you'll get the second half of this next week on Friday. Good, good. All right, before we get started, do me a favor, man. Hit that like button. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. It really helps grow WrestleJuice. I don't know what that sound was. Anyways, let's go ahead and kick this off with Billy Edkin. Says, Steve, do you think the return of CM Punk has been a little bit underwhelming? Or do you think AEW is building up a major heel run for him? Thanks again, friendo. I'm going to say no on both counts. I think that CM Punk has been telling a story that isn't often told in professional wrestling, and that is, why is it when people who are old and have been gone for a long time come back to wrestling, they're immediately just as great as they were when they left? You see this happen a lot. Like Christian was gone for like 7 years, and he's able to get in the ring at the age of 47 and compete with, and not just compete with, beat guys like Will Hobbs. To me, I understand wrestling is supposed to be fantastic. It's supposed to be, you're supposed to suspend your disbelief. But that is one of the tropes that I've never really, I get it. Like Goldberg is 55 years old. He could literally barely move in the ring. This guy limps his way. If you look at the Crown Jewel match that he had against Lashley, he literally limped his way to the ring. Now, maybe he was selling, but I don't know. He's 55, maybe not. I limp my way around the house and I'm 43. So it's an interesting question. Why is it in pro wrestling you can be like Hogan age and still be able to take on dudes like, 2/3 your age? I don't get it. Or even a third your age. Now that I think about it, them dudes are old. So I appreciate that when CM Punk came back, he's sort of telling this story where he needs to get a lot of matches under his belt. He's barely eking out wins against guys like, what's his name? Matt Sydal, against Daniel Garcia, who's like super young. And he's got to get back to the point where he was before he left the WWE 7 years ago. And I really like that. And I hope that he gets a couple losses along the way. I honestly hope that he loses against Eddie Kingston coming up a Full Gear this Saturday, where I'm going to be watching along with the rest of the Church of Friendos, minus Larson, because he's in Disneyland at twitch.tv/Steven Larson. Should be a fun time. Come check it out. So I actually think that they were in a bit of a bind with CM Punk's return. There's all these other people already there in the main event scene. Let him tell his story the way he wants to tell it. And I think he's going to actually build to sort of like, you guys remember when Rocky came back, the movie Rocky Balboa, was like technically Rocky 6. And he came back and it was like, oh man, this guy, he's all old. He's beat up. He's got to get back into shape to be able to take on the best of the best. And I think he actually lost the match in Rocky 6, I think. But it was the journey that mattered. It was the fact that he was able to come back and hang that mattered. I remember I saw that movie. I actually went to the premiere of that movie. So anyways, no, I like it. I think he's actually building up a pretty strong face run, to be honest with you. He's this old dude who everybody loves and he's happy to be there. But man, it's hard to compete with the present and the future. And I think that's going to lead to him getting, higher and higher on the totem pole. And then he'll probably win the world title. And then maybe a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever, he'll maybe have a heel run. But I kind of appreciate the story that he's telling right now. It's relatable. As a guy who's in similar age to CM Punk, the idea of trying to compete with the younger generation, with the future, with the present, after being gone for a while, I would think, man, this has got to be rough. It's more realistic. It's like when Jordan came back and he was only scoring 20 a game with the Washington Wizards, which he never should have done. Let's move on. Xander Staff. Could Raw potentially pull off a 2.0 like NXT did? New look, no storylines, and maybe some new characters. It's kind of a different situation. Could they all of a sudden fill half their roster with people who just got signed in February? I don't know that anybody would want to see that. I think that they go through very minor aesthetic changes every 6 months or so, every year or so. They'll change their opening theme. They'll tweak the logo a little bit. You've seen that happen over the years. But could they go through a complete overhaul? Sure, I think they could. I think it'd be one of those things where it would be a kind of a ballsy move, given that, USA is paying them like $1 billion for the programming, and only like I think 30 or 40 million for NXT. That's why they could do that with NXT, because it's less of a risk. But yeah, I mean they could. I don't know if it would feel as drastic as what they did with NXT, which is where they completely and totally change like the DNA of the show. I don't think Raw could do that. I don't think USA would allow Raw to do that. Joe Hansen says, I've never been to a WrestleMania, so I can't speak on that experience, but I've always said house shows are the best live event experience. Outside of your trips to Mania, what's your favorite event you've been at live? So, WrestleMania, in my opinion, is a bit overrated. The last one I went to was 33, which, was a pretty decent show. But I was sitting on the field. Never get field seats. Never, ever. That's my recommendation. Never get field seats. Try to get lower bowl seats. And try to figure out which way the sun is facing. And make sure it's behind you, because I went to 31 as well, and it was an awesome experience because of all that. The sun was behind us. We were in the lower bowl. Great experience. We got the Seth Rollins cash in. It was a really good WrestleMania. 2 years later, not as good. My favorite, but I actually agree that nothing compares to a live house show in WWE. I think that's probably the way to go versus a WrestleMania. I guess it depends on what you want. If you want the big spectacle, then go to Mania. If you want something where the wrestlers lighten up a little bit, they're a little bit looser, then yeah, that's the way to go. My favorite live event of all time has been All In. Nothing else compares to All In. Let's see here. John Davies, do you think wrestling should reference politics or current events when they do their storytelling? For example, he provides Retribution being a dig/reference to Antifa. No, I mean, I think that there's a difference between including sort of societal angles, sort of events based on like sort of the zeitgeist of society and what's happening in the current day, versus out and out digs at political groups or political movements that are happening. I think the latter you probably want to stay away from. I think, if you can show that you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on, in the popular culture, then you're probably doing a pretty good job. I think AEW, by and large, is able to pull that off with wrestlers they sign, stories they tell, et cetera, et cetera. WWE has a little bit more difficult time doing that. Brandon will win. Can we get a tier list of every Dwayne Johnson movie? I might try this sometime down the line. That's actually a fun idea. And he points out Southland Tales obviously being the best one. Southland Tales is going to have its own category. And that category is going to be Southland Tales. Torch Bearer asks, with Dynamite moving to TBS and the AEW roster continuing to bloat, should Rampage move to 2 hours to help showcase more of the roster, especially those who are stuck on Dark? No. Although I do think Tony Khan is probably troubleshooting ideas on how to get Rampage to a decent time slot. I don't know how he'd do it. He's very rich. Seems to have a lot of stroke there with TNT and TBS. I kind of get the feeling that he's going to try to do that somehow. So yeah, I don't think they should move to 2 hours though. That would be, I would not like that. Personally speaking, I would hate that. I don't want to watch 4 hours of wrestling every single Friday. Luke Williams Bukak. What are your views on having more short-term world champions? For example, would it have been a good idea for crowd favorite like Orange Cassidy to have temporarily taken the world title from Kenny Omega for a short title reign? I kind of feel like yes. I kind of feel like when he had that triple threat against, who was it, Pac, Orange Cassidy, and Kenny, I think it was. That would have been a great time to get that title off Kenny for a short run. Kenny wouldn't have really suffered because Pac would have eaten the pin. I think it'd be kind of cool. I love when ECW used to do that. I think they used to do it via necessity. But even like Monday Night Raw back in the day, back in the Attitude Era, they used to hot potato that title quite a bit because they had a stacked roster. I think AEW might be able to do that maybe once Hangman Page's title run is done with. Certainly they could try with the TNT title. I think that the WWE title over on Raw, they have so many sort of B plus A minus main event guys there, guys that aren't Roman Reigns, that they could totally hot potato that title. I think because there's not one definitive star of Raw right now. With the WWE Championship, you can give people like 3-month title reigns and mix it up a little bit as long as the story dictates it. The story comes first. Let's see here. RJ Urbanati asks, what's something Ring of Honor needs to do to get back into the mainstream like they used to be if they come back? A different television presentation. They need to get with the times. Their presentation comes off as corny. It really does. The talent is terrific. The wrestling is terrific from what I've seen, and I don't watch a lot of Ring of Honor, but I see who's over there, and I see some of their little vignettes, and I see some of their matches. But every time I've tried to tune in a Ring of Honor, their programming just seems like it's stuck in the past, and it's not up to date. It's too trying to be like you can have your finger on the pulse of what modern production looks like and what urgent TV looks like, and still honor the past, which is what they're trying to do. I think it doesn't work. It generates no buzz. Like everything is kind of corny over there. So I hope that if they do go away and sort of maybe bring in some fresh production eyes, they can get there. Let's see here. Nathan LUFC says, with the amount of new/green talent being pushed on NXT 2.0, do you worry that there is an increased risk of injuries due to botched moves, seeing as many of them have only been trained as wrestlers for a matter of months? So a lot of them are coming up on their 1-year anniversary with NXT. A lot of these, the talents being pushed now that you hadn't seen before in 1.0 were just signed in February. I think that, yes, I think even just this past week on 2.0, we saw one of the Creed brothers damn near drop Ikemen Jiro on his head, and we saw Elektra Lopez hit her finish on a jobber, and it was an ugly landing. I don't know whose fault that is. I don't know. Maybe it's the people taking the moves. I'm not a wrestler. I don't know. But it was very noticeable. It's not the first time I've noticed it with newer talent. Yeah. You do. Absolutely. I thought the same thing for AEW for a while because they give their wrestlers more freedom. They're signing people who are newer to the sport. That's why the botch compilations, I know that they were basically trying to bury AEW as this botch fest, which it's not, but you do see more of that in AEW than you do WWE, or at least up until a certain point you did. Every once in a while, still in AEW, I'll cringe a little bit because sometimes the moves they try just seem a little too risky. And I don't know, maybe I'm just old. I don't want to see people get hurt. Let's see here. Rosen says, if you could bring back any wrestler from any era to AEW, who would it be, why, and who would you like them to feud with? And he suggests QT Marshall because Rosen is obsessed with QT Marshall. Bring back any wrestler from any era to AEW. I would say it'd clearly have to be Dusty Rhodes in his prime, have him time travel, take on his son. That would be weird, but he's great, and I think that would be awesome. All right, we're going to end on this one. Mr. Rylan Ray asks, will Larson ever make an appearance on the channel, or would you do a collab with any other wrestling YouTubers like New Legacy Inc. or Wrestling with Regret? It's always possible, I guess. Larson being on this channel means that it would automatically be a Going In Raw thing. So I don't think that's going to happen because we would just do that at Going In Raw. I know they're different things, they're different productions, and I do this a different way than Going In Raw. But that's always the joke that we told between us. I don't know. The way I do WrestleJuice is very specific to my schedule. I've given some amount of thought to starting like a weekly, once a week WrestleJuice podcast. But I already do a podcast in my day job. I'm not sure I want to do another one. But if I did that, I'd probably try to collaborate a little bit more. I just bring in guests to shoot the shit with. But maybe it'll happen. Maybe it won't. I don't know. Let's see here. Yeah, so that's going to do it for now. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I definitely appreciate it. Check out one of these other videos. Next week, we'll have the rest of these questions from this week's QA thread. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. See you at one of these other videos. All right, go ahead and click on one of these, and I'll see you there.